Stupid Beta hit pregnant Omega 34 times without knowing. Then the powerful Alpha King protects her. The kingdom of Urandor lay under a pale silver moon, its tall spires and winding streets shrouded in mist. The air smelled of rain and magic, a scent that clung to the skin like a secret. In this kingdom, power was not always measured by crowns or swords. It was measured by the invisible threads that tied people together: alphas, betas, and omegas, each carrying gifts and burdens beyond ordinary comprehension. Lyra moved carefully along the cobblestones, her cloak pulled tight against the chill. She was an omega, though she had always tried to hide it, blending with the crowds as though her smallness could protect her. Omegas in Urandor were rare and delicate, and rumors said their fates were often entwined with magic stronger than kings or armies. She didn't hear the soft footsteps behind her until it was too late. A beta knight, tall and steady, stepped into her path. His armor gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a silver glow that made him appear almost unreal. "Lyra," he said, his voice low, cautious. "You shouldn't be here tonight." Lyra flinched, but not out of fear alone. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of concern and confusion that unsettled her more than any threat could. I needed to see the market," she said softly, "just for a moment." He sighed, running a hand over his hair. "The festival tonight, it's dangerous for someone like you." "I'm fine," she whispered, though her stomach twisted with unease. She had always known that something strange followed her, though she didn't understand what. Sometimes, when she touched a simple flower or the cold stone of a fountain, it seemed to hum beneath her fingers as though responding to her presence. The beta's name was Irene. He had known her since childhood, though they had always kept a cautious distance. Betas were rare protectors, often unaware of the full extent of the Omega's power. Irene, with his quiet strength, had always tried to look out for her, though neither of them fully understood the connection that bound them. Tonight, however, something felt different. As they reached the square, the festival lights glimmered like stars fallen to earth. Stalls of exotic fruits, candles that flickered with unnatural flame, and music played by unseen musicians created a strange, almost dreamlike world. People danced, laughed, and drank, but Lyra felt apart from it all, as though an invisible thread tied her to another place entirely. It began with a shiver that ran down her spine, warm and electric, as if the night itself recognized her. She clutched her stomach, confused, and Irene's hand shot out to steady her. "Lyra, I don't know what's happening," she whispered, panic rising in her throat. It's like something is inside me, but I don't understand." Irene's eyes widened, a shadow of fear crossing his face. "Inside you, Lyra," he hesitated. "Do you mean—" "I don't know," she cried, stepping back. "I've never felt anything like this. It's like magic or a curse." The beta reached for her, but the air seemed to ripple between them, a strange hum that made even him falter. In the corner of the square, a hooded figure watched, silent and still. Its presence sent a chill through Lyra, though she didn't know why. Suddenly, the festival lights flickered and dimmed, as though the moon itself had withdrawn. Whispers filled the air, soft but urgent, a language she couldn't understand. And then, in a heartbeat, Lyra's hands glowed with a faint silver light. The crowd gasped and stepped back, fear and awe mingling in their eyes. Irene grabbed her arm. "Lyra, calm yourself, you can control it." "I can't," she said, her voice trembling. The glow spread down her arms and wrapped around her stomach, warm and unyielding. She fell to her knees, and the music seemed to warp into a strange, mournful tone. It was then that the hooded figure moved. With a sweep of its cloak, it vanished into the shadows, leaving only a trace of cold darkness behind. Lyra felt a tug at her heart, an invisible pull that made her want to follow, but Irene held her firmly, his strength steadying her in ways words could not. "You're not alone," he whispered. "Whatever this is, we face it together." Lyra's chest heaved, and she nodded weakly. I just want to be normal," she admitted, tears shining in her eyes. "I don't want this." Irene's gaze softened, but a shadow of worry remained. Normal is a luxury for some. For you, the world has chosen otherwise, but you don't have to face it alone. And that was when Kale came. The Alpha King of Urendor appeared like a storm breaking the clouds. Tall, powerful, and commanding, he seemed to carry the weight of centuries in his eyes. His presence silenced the square. Even the wind seemed to bow before him. "Step aside," Kale said, his voice low but cutting through every sound. The crowd parted without question. "This Omega belongs under my protection." Lyra's heart pounded. She had heard stories of King Kale, the Alpha whose wrath could level armies, whose judgment was final, whose gaze could pierce lies and deceit alike. Yet now he looked at her not with anger, but with concern, as though he could sense the turmoil inside her. Irene stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I can take care of her. Please." Kale's gaze shifted to him, sharp as a blade. "You have no idea what you are dealing with, Beta." His eyes returned to Lyra. "Come with me, now." Lyra felt the pull of his power, not violent but undeniable. Something deep inside her stirred fear, yes, but also a strange sense of relief. She had been lost in confusion and danger for so long. Now, at last, someone strong enough to face the forces surrounding her had appeared. As they moved through the misty streets, Kale's presence was a shield against unseen threats. Lyra noticed shadows moving at the edge of her vision, creatures or men. She could not tell, all fleeing before the aura of the Alpha King. "Why are they after me?" she asked, her voice small. Kale's eyes darkened. "Because of what you carry. The Omega curse is ancient. Your child is tied to a prophecy that could change the kingdom's fate. Many would use you, and it is my duty to prevent that." Lyra's stomach twisted, not just with fear but with the weight of realization. She had not understood the importance of her life, her powers, or the child growing within her. She was more than herself now. She was part of something much larger, something dangerous. Irene stayed close, but he no longer tried to take the lead. He understood that Kale's role was greater than his own, yet a pang of helplessness struck him. I will stay," he said softly. "I can't leave her alone." Kale's eyes flicked toward him, and for the first time Lyra noticed a hint of respect. "Very well, but you obey my commands. Do not risk her life unnecessarily." They reached a secluded tower at the edge of the city, a place steeped in ancient magic. Kale led Lyra inside, the door closing behind them with a heavy finality. The air was thick with the scent of herbs, candle wax, and something older, something alive. "Here, you will be safe," Kale said. "And you will learn to control your powers, lest they destroy you or those you love." Lyra sank to the floor, exhausted. Her hands still glowed faintly, a reminder of the chaotic magic inside her. Irene knelt beside her, holding her hand. "You are not alone," he repeated, and this time she believed it. Kale watched them silently, his expression unreadable. But inside, a storm brewed not of anger but of worry and determination. This Omega, fragile yet strong, held a power that could unite or destroy the kingdom. And he, the Alpha King, would bear the burden of protecting her, even if it meant facing forces older than the throne itself. That night, the moon shone brighter than ever over Urendor. Mist curled around the tower, hiding it from the eyes of enemies. Inside, Lyra sat between two men who would shape her fate, one gentle, confused, and loyal, the other powerful, unyielding, and determined. And deep within her, the child stirred, as if sensing the guardians who now surrounded her. Outside, the shadows moved closer, unseen but present. The prophecy had begun. The Omega curse had awakened. And in the quiet of the night, a kingdom held its breath. The sun had barely risen over the kingdom of Urendor when Lyra woke to a soft, golden light streaming through the tall windows of Kale's tower. The mist that clung to the city streets below seemed like a veil between her and the world she had once known, a world that now felt distant, fragile, and full of danger. She sat up slowly, her hands resting over the faint glow that still lingered around her stomach. The child within her moved as if sensing her unease. Lyra's breath hitched, a mixture of awe and fear. She had always felt like an ordinary girl, yet now she was something far more significant, tied to a prophecy she barely understood. Irene knelt nearby, tending to a small wound on his hand. He had not left her side since the festival the previous night. "You slept more than you should have," he said gently, his voice soft with concern. "Are you feeling better?" Lyra gave him a small, uncertain smile. I think so, but what if it happens again?" Her hands tightened over her stomach. "The glow, the magic, it frightened the people. I don't want anyone to fear me." Irene reached out, placing a comforting hand over hers. "You're not alone. Kale will protect you. And I will be here too. We'll face it together." Lyra's heart beat faster. There was comfort in his words, but also an ache she could not ignore. Irene had always been her friend, her protector in quiet ways. But now, under the weight of the prophecy, she felt the presence of someone far stronger, someone who could command storms and silence shadows with a look. That someone was Kale. He entered the room then, silent and steady, his presence immediately filling the space. Even in the soft morning light, his eyes were sharp, calculating, and yet they softened slightly when they fell on Lyra. He studied her with an intensity that made her heart flutter, a mixture of fear and fascination. "You have questions," Kale said, his voice low and deliberate. "I will answer what I can, but some truths cannot be spoken lightly. The prophecy tied to your child, it is not a tale for the faint of heart." Lyra swallowed, her throat dry. "I need to understand. I can't just hide here forever." Kale's gaze shifted to the window, where the mist danced like a living thing. "Hiding may keep you alive for now, but it will not keep the kingdom safe. Forces are moving against you, Lyra. Those who know the prophecy will stop at nothing to claim your child, for its power is unlike any other, and they will use fear, manipulation, and even violence to get it." Irene's jaw tightened. "Then we fight, whatever it takes. I don't care what dangers come." Kale's eyes met his, cold and unreadable. "Do not mistake loyalty for understanding. You cannot fight what you do not see, Beta. There are rules older than your courage, older than your strength." Lyra looked between them, torn. Irene's protective warmth had always been a constant in her life, a tether to safety. Kale's presence, however, was different. It was magnetic, commanding, and somehow terrifyingly gentle at the same time. Her chest tightened as she realized she had to trust him if she wanted to survive. "I will try to learn," she said quietly. "Teach me. I want to control this, whatever it is inside me." Kale nodded once sharply. "Good. You will need more than courage. You will need discipline. You will need understanding. And most of all, you will need to trust me." The days that followed were strange, surreal, and exhausting. Kale's tower became a sanctuary of lessons and vigilance. Lyra trained with him, learning to focus her energy, to quiet the strange pulse of power within her. Irene assisted, though his methods were gentler, rooted in patience and empathy rather than force. Despite their differences, the two men worked in tandem to protect her, each offering a part of what she needed. Kale taught her strength, control, and vigilance, while Irene taught her compassion, resilience, and the courage to face fear without despair. Yet even as she learned, the shadows around her grew thicker. Rumors reached the tower, strangers moving through the mist, eyes that glowed like lanterns in the dark, whispers in the night that spoke her name and the words of the prophecy. Lyra's heart ached with every step she took beyond the safety of the tower walls. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a bruised purple, Kale led her to the balcony. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of rain and earth. "Do you feel it?" he asked. His hand hovered near hers, but he did not touch. Lyra nodded. "Something watches, always." Kale's eyes narrowed. "It is not just something, it is many things, and soon they will come for you." Before she could respond, the distant sound of clanging metal and hurried footsteps reached their ears. Lyra's stomach twisted with fear. "Is it them?" Kale did not answer immediately. Instead, he swept the balcony with his gaze, alert, silent, as though the shadows themselves spoke to him. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, he drew a small dagger from his belt. "We will see." The intruders appeared at the edge of the courtyard below, figures clad in dark cloaks, moving with unnatural swiftness. Lyra felt her powers stir within her, a warm glow against her skin, but fear held her in place. Irene stepped forward instinctively, though Kale's hand shot out to stop him. "Do not act rashly," Kale said. His eyes, cold and commanding, seemed to pierce the very darkness. "Let them come. We will protect the Omega." The cloaked figures moved closer, but the air shifted. A low hum vibrated through the tower, and Lyra felt the magic respond to her presence. Her stomach pulsed, a soft glow emanating from within her. The intruders faltered, as though they sensed the power tied to her child. Kale's dagger flashed in the dim light and the figures froze. Then, as if recognizing the futility of their attempt, they retreated into the night. The mist swallowed them, leaving only the echo of their footsteps behind. Lyra sank to her knees, trembling. I can't control it fully," she whispered. Irene knelt beside her, holding her hand. "It's okay. You don't have to control it all at once. You have us. We'll help you." Kale stood silently, his eyes lingering on her with an intensity she could not fully understand. There was a strange tenderness beneath his commanding presence, a protective instinct that he could not, or would not, hide. Days passed, and Lyra's understanding of her powers deepened. She could summon warmth, a subtle light that repelled shadows and danger. She could sense when people approached, whether friend or foe. But the weight of the prophecy of the child growing within her pressed heavily on her heart. Irene watched her quietly, admiration and worry intertwined in his gaze. He had always been her friend, her shield, yet now he felt the helplessness of not being enough. He could not wield the magic, could not fully protect her as Kale could. Still, he stayed, loyal, steadfast, and unwavering. Kale, for his part, became a figure both terrifying and reassuring. He demanded discipline, focus, and respect, yet he showed patience in ways few had ever seen. Under his guidance, Lyra learned to channel her magic, to quiet the storm within her, and to face the unknown with courage. One night, as the moon cast silver beams over the tower, Lyra stood at the balcony, gazing at the misty city below. Irene joined her, silent, as was their custom. "You're changing," he said softly. "I see it, the power, it suits you." Lyra shook her head. "It doesn't feel like mine. Sometimes I feel like it's a storm inside me, waiting to destroy everything I love." Irene took her hand. "Then let us help you. Let us be the calm in the storm." Kale appeared behind them then, his shadow falling over the balcony. "You must understand something," he said, his voice grave. "The child you carry is more than life. It is the key to balance, to hope, to survival. Those who seek it will not stop, and the closer the child grows to birth, the greater the danger becomes." Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. I understand," she said, though the truth was that she did not fully. Fear and hope warred inside her, twisting her heart in ways she had never felt before. Kale's hand hovered near hers, almost touching, yet not quite. "You are not alone. Never forget that," he said, and the sincerity in his tone cut through the fear that had gripped her for so long. The night passed quietly, yet the city remained restless. Shadows lingered at the edges of Kale's sight, subtle movements that hinted at the enemy still waiting, still plotting. Lyra lay in her bed, her hands resting over her glowing stomach, feeling the child stir once more. She thought of Irene, steadfast and loyal. She thought of Kale, powerful and commanding. And she understood, in a way she had not before, that her life was bound to theirs in ways that went beyond friendship or duty. And deep in the shadows, the whispering began again. "Soon the trial begins." Lyra shivered, clutching the blankets. The prophecy was no longer a story told by whispers. It was a reality she could feel in her bones. And when the trial came, she knew that nothing would be as it had been. The winds of Urindor howled through the mountains, carrying the scent of rain and wildflowers to the hidden valley where Kale had taken Lyra. The Alpha King's tower now felt more like a fortress, surrounded by cliffs and forests that no ordinary intruder could cross. Yet, even here, the air thrummed with tension, as though the land itself was aware of the prophecy and the child Lyra carried. Lyra stood at the balcony, watching the clouds twist over the peaks. Her hands rested over her stomach, where a soft, steady warmth pulsed beneath her fingers. The child within her was growing stronger, and with it, the magic she barely understood. She had learned to summon it carefully to quiet it when it flared, but she still feared the day she would lose control entirely. Eren approached quietly, his footsteps soft against the stone floor. "You've been staring for hours," he said gently. "Do you feel the pull again?" Lyra shook her head, though her heart beat fast. "Not yet, but I know it's coming. I can feel it deep inside me. Something is waiting for the right moment." Eren's hand brushed hers, and she felt a strange comfort in his presence, even amid the fear. "Whatever happens, I will stand by you. Always," he said, his voice firm but gentle. Before Lyra could respond, Kale entered, his long coat trailing behind him. His eyes, dark and commanding, swept over the valley below. "It is time," he said simply, his voice carrying authority that made the wind itself seem to pause. "The ritual to strengthen your control begins tonight." Lyra's stomach tightened. The ritual had been spoken of in whispers, a secret passed down among the alphas and ancient scholars. It was said to awaken latent power, to prepare the child for the world it would inherit, but it demanded courage, trust, and sacrifice. Eren's hand squeezed hers. "We'll face it together," he whispered. Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment fear softened into quiet resolve. She realized that no matter how powerful Kale was, Eren's loyalty and calm strength were a lifeline she could not ignore. Kale led them to a chamber deep within the tower, where the walls were etched with runes that glimmered faintly in the dim light. Candles floated in the air, casting soft shadows that danced like living beings. At the center of the room was a circular pattern, carved into the stone and filled with silver dust that shimmered like starlight. "This is the circle of binding," Kale explained, his voice steady. "It will amplify your control over the magic within you and prepare the child for what it must face. But the circle demands complete trust. You must allow it to connect with your soul and the child's." Lyra swallowed, her throat dry. "And if I fail?" Kale's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "Then the magic will turn inward. It will harm no one else, but it could leave you weakened." Eren stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You won't fail," he said. "I believe in you." Lyra drew a deep breath, steeling herself. She stepped into the circle, feeling the cold stone beneath her feet and the weight of destiny pressing on her shoulders. Kale circled the pattern, his hands tracing the runes as he chanted in a language older than the mountains themselves. The air thickened with power, vibrating with a sound like distant thunder. Lyra felt a warmth rise from her stomach, spreading through her body in waves. Her hands glowed faintly, silver light dancing along her fingers. The circle responded to her fear, her hope, and her determination, amplifying the bond she shared with the child. Eren stood at her side, grounding her. "Focus on your heart," he said softly. "Not the fear, not the danger, the heart." Lyra closed her eyes, letting the warmth and light fill her. She imagined a protective cocoon around herself and the child, a bubble of hope and strength. Slowly, the chaos inside her began to settle. The hum of magic became a steady heartbeat, synchronized with her own. Kale's voice rose, carrying power and authority. "Now, allow yourself to trust. Trust the circle, trust us, trust the child." The glow in Lyra's hands flared brighter, then steadied, steady as a star in the night. A feeling of unity filled her, herself, the child, Eren, and Kale, all connected by invisible threads of trust and destiny. For the first time, she felt that her magic was not a burden but a part of her. And then, as the ritual reached its peak, a loud crash echoed through the tower. The walls trembled and shadows twisted unnaturally along the edges of the room. Lyra's heart leaped in fear. "Someone's here," she cried. Kale's expression hardened. "I knew they would come," he said. His hand went to his sword, eyes sharp. "They will not leave with the child." The door burst open and dark figures poured into the chamber. Cloaked in shadows, they moved with unnatural speed and precision. Lyra felt her magic stir automatically, the glow around her hands expanding like ripples in water. The intruders faltered at the circle's light, but they pressed forward relentlessly. Irene drew his blade, standing between Lyra and the threat. "Stay behind me," he shouted, though his eyes were wide with fear. Kale moved like a storm unleashed, his sword a silver blur as he cut through the shadows with ease. The air seemed to bend around him, obeying his will. Yet the intruders were many and they pressed closer, intent on reaching Lyra. Lyra felt a surge of panic, then remembered the circle, the trust, and the child. She lifted her hands, focusing entirely on the warmth within her. The silver light expanded outward, a wall of protective energy that repelled the intruders. They shrieked, retreating just enough to give Kale and Irene the advantage. For a tense moment, the chamber held its breath, light against shadow, power against malice. Then with a final effort, Kale struck the last intruder down. The shadows dissipated, leaving silence in their wake. Lyra sank to the floor, trembling. Irene knelt beside her, his hands warm on hers. "You did it," he whispered. "You controlled it. You protected us all." Kale sheathed his sword and approached slowly. His eyes softened as he looked at her, but a shadow of worry remained. "This was only the beginning. Those who seek the child will not stop. You must remain vigilant. You must continue to grow stronger." Lyra nodded, exhaustion and relief washing over her. "I will try," she said. "I have to." Days passed in a blur of training, rest, and preparation. The bond between the three of them deepened. Lyra relied on Irene's calm and loyalty, while Kale's power and guidance gave her strength. Together, they formed a fragile triangle of trust and protection, each aware of the danger that lingered just beyond the tower walls. One evening, Kale led Lyra to the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley. The sky was painted with shades of purple and gold, and the wind tugged at their cloaks. "You have grown," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Not just in power, but in understanding. The child is strong because of you, Lyra, and you are stronger than you know." Lyra felt a warmth rise in her chest, a mix of pride, fear, and something deeper she could not name. She glanced at Kale, then at Irene, and realized that her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. The prophecy, the child, and the danger had brought them together, binding them with threads of fate she could feel in her very bones. Before she could respond, a chill ran through the air. The shadows of the valley twisted unnaturally, and a low whisper echoed in her mind. She turned to Kale and Irene, her eyes wide. "It's coming," she said. Kale's expression hardened, his jaw tight. "Then we prepare. Whatever it is, we face it together." Irene nodded, his grip on her hand firm. "We will not fail," he said. "I promise." And high above the valley, hidden among the jagged cliffs, a dark figure watched. Its eyes glowed like embers, and a smile twisted across its face. The child's power was awakening, and with it, the forces of the shadow began to stir. The trial had begun. The winds of the hidden valley howled like restless spirits as Lyra stood at the center of the circle of binding. The stone beneath her feet hummed with energy, silver runes glowing brighter than ever. The ritual had reached its peak, and she could feel the child inside her responding with a heartbeat that seemed to echo through the mountains themselves. Irene stood beside her, his hand steady over hers. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. His voice held both worry and unwavering loyalty, a reminder that she was not alone, no matter the dangers ahead. Lyra took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth within her. "I have to be," she said. I won't let the prophecy control me. I control it. Kale's shadow fell over the circle, his presence commanding yet calm. His eyes, dark and unreadable, studied her carefully. Remember, he said, power without control can destroy more than just the enemy. Trust yourself. Trust the child. Trust us. Lyra nodded, feeling the bond between them stronger than ever. She had learned courage in fire and control in storm. Now she had to wield both. From the edges of the valley, shadows shifted unnaturally. Dark figures emerged, moving like smoke across the rocks, their eyes glowing with hunger and malice. They were the forces that had stalked her since the beginning, the ones who sought to claim the child for themselves. Kale stepped forward, his sword flashing silver in the dim light. The ground seemed to bend to his will, even the wind responded to the Alpha King. Iren drew his blade as well, standing as Lyra's shield. The three of them formed a triangle of protection, facing the encroaching darkness with unflinching resolve. Lyra lifted her hands, letting the circle amplify her power. Silver light expanded from her fingertips, wrapping the child in warmth and protection. The intruders faltered, hissing in frustration. They had expected a frightened girl, vulnerable and weak. Instead, they were met with a force that radiated life, courage, and unbreakable bonds. Now, Kale shouted. Iren, hold the left flank. Lyra, focus your light forward. Iren moved with precision, his blade deflecting shadows that tried to flank them. Lyra channeled the warmth of her child, the silver light growing into a radiant shield that pushed the intruders back. Kale's sword flashed through the shadows, cutting a path of brilliance through the darkness. For a moment, the battle seemed endless, a clash of light and shadow that threatened to tear the valley apart. Lyra felt the child stir violently, as though sensing the danger and lending strength. Her fear rose, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the connection she shared with Iren, Kale, and the child. Together, Kale shouted, his voice carrying power that vibrated through the air. Lyra and Iren joined in, their combined force creating a wave of silver energy that crashed against the intruders. One by one, they faltered, their forms dissolving into smoke that the wind carried away. Finally, silence fell. The valley seemed to hold its breath. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. Iren knelt beside her immediately, his hand steady on hers. "You did it," he whispered. "You controlled it. You saved us all." Kale approached slowly, his gaze fixed on her. "You have done more than survive," he said. "You have embraced the prophecy. You have become its master, not its victim." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She had been afraid for so long, afraid of her power, afraid of the child, afraid of what the world might demand of her. Now she felt a sense of triumph, not just in magic but in courage and trust. Iren smiled faintly, pride and relief shining in his eyes. "You were never alone, Lyra. Not once." Kale's expression softened in a way that startled her. For the first time, she saw not the ruler, not the storm, but a man who cared deeply and fiercely. "You have done well," he said quietly, almost to himself. "The child will grow strong because of you." Days passed, the valley slowly returning to calm. Lyra rested in the circle, learning to strengthen her connection to the child. Iren stayed beside her, offering gentle guidance and unwavering loyalty. Kale remained nearby, his presence constant and reassuring, though he gave her space to grow and learn. The three of them formed a balance, a triangle of trust and care that had been forged in fire, shadow, and uncertainty. Lyra realized that the prophecy had not just been about danger or power. It had been about connection, trust, and the choices they made together. One morning, as the sun bathed the mountains in gold, Kale approached her with a small, ornate box. He knelt, offering it with hands steady and deliberate. "A gift for the child," he said. Inside was a tiny pendant, a silver charm shaped like a star, glowing faintly with protective magic. "It will shield them even when we cannot." Lyra's hands trembled as she accepted it. "Thank you," she whispered. The bond between them felt deeper than ever, an unspoken promise that they would face whatever came next together. Irene placed a hand over hers, a silent reassurance. We'll protect the child, together. And then, a soft stirring in the valley reminded them all that the world beyond the mountains was still full of unknown dangers. The child moved within Lyra, small but strong, as if sensing the protection that surrounded them. Weeks passed, the valley safe for now, though the shadows of the past lingered at the edges. Lyra's powers continued to grow, and she learned to channel them with precision and care. She discovered that the warmth inside her was not just magic, but love, courage, and hope intertwined with the life she carried. One evening, as the three watched the sunset together, Irene spoke softly. "We've come far, haven't we?" Lyra smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes, and yet I feel like this is only the beginning." Kale's hand brushed hers, careful but intentional. "It is," he said. "The prophecy will always bring challenges, but now you have strength, allies, and love. You are no longer alone." Lyra felt the truth in his words, and for the first time she did not feel fear. She felt readiness, courage, and a quiet joy. The child within her stirred, a heartbeat that seemed to echo through the mountains, a promise of life and hope. The bond between them had been tested in fire and shadow, and it had endured. Lyra understood that the true power of the prophecy was not in magic alone, but in the trust and love that connected them. As night fell, the stars shone brighter than ever over Erendor. The mist curled around the mountains like a protective blanket. In the distance, the faint shadows stirred, but they no longer carried fear for Lyra. She had faced them, and with the strength of Kale and Irene, she knew she could face anything to come. A soft whisper carried on the wind, not of threat but of promise. Irene and Kale nodded beside her, their presence steady, unwavering, and protective. And high above, in the endless sky, the first stars of the night twinkled as if watching over them, guardians of a new beginning. The trial had ended. The prophecy had been embraced. The child and the kingdom would live on, protected by courage, love, and the bonds forged in shadow. For Lyra, Irene, and Kale, the story was not just one of danger and power. It was one of trust, redemption, and the quiet, unshakable strength of the heart. And as the night deepened, they knew this truth. Together they could face anything.